Welcome to the Arthritis at Work Symposium. I'm Stephanie Hudgens, Director of Field Engagement with the Arthritis Foundation. I have a special focus on the Arthritis at Work initiative. We are so pleased to have you all with us today as we explore how arthritis impacts the workplace and how we can create more supportive, inclusive environments for employees living with arthritis. A quick note before we jump in, all participant lines are muted, and we encourage you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit any questions. We'll have time to answer those after the presentations. I'm thrilled to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Paulo Pinho, a physician and healthcare informatics expert with more than 25 years of experience. He specializes in using data, technology, and predictive modeling to improve care for at-risk patients. Dr. Pinho holds degrees from NJIT and New Jersey Medical School and is currently completing a master's in biomedical informatics at Rutgers. He's board certified in internal medicine, pediatrics, clinical informatics, and insurance medicine, and he founded Pace Healthcare, serving more than 8,000 patients. His work spans rural clinics in Haiti to concierge practices in Singapore. He's also held leadership roles at Discern Health and Diameter Health, focusing on interoperability and national healthcare data standards. Dr. Pinho serves on both the local and national boards of the Arthritis Foundation, and in his spare time, he's completed a half marathon in all 50 states. Dr. Paulo, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So today we're going to just kind of do an intro into arthritis, its impact on individuals, and then also kind of focus on its impact on the workplace. And so just to provide some context to, arthritic conditions and their impact, in the United States. So about 1 in 4 Americans has doctor-diagnosed arthritis. A patient can actually have more than one different types of arthritis. And we're going to focus on 2 sort of broad types of arthritis. One is osteoarthritis, which is typically, kind of a process of joint degradation. And the other one is some of the inflammatory arthritis, and the prototype disease for that is actually rheumatoid arthritis. And so you could see there's about 31 million adults with osteoarthritis and about 10 million adults that have one of the inflammatory types of arthritis. There's a whole host of individuals that have, sort of varying degrees of symptoms that haven't been formally diagnosed. And there's even a population subgroup in society that has radiographic evidence of arthritis where they don't necessarily have symptoms. I think one of the big misconceptions is that arthritis is sort of a rite of passage disease, but really it's not. It's an inflammatory condition that has very clear environmental triggers, very clear genetic triggers. And so even children can actually have arthritis. And it actually has in the pediatric population more children diagnosed with arthritic conditions than the combination of cystic fibrosis, juvenile diabetes, and leukemia combined. It's actually the second most common condition in the United States, the second most common reason to see a doctor. Half of all patients are over age 65, and it does increase with age, where about 3.6% of young adults have arthritis, all the way to about 50+% of those people over age 75. There is a female predilection. Women, have a higher prevalence, and the relative risk is about 2 to 3 to 1. There is increased prevalence in population, largely because of the fact that we are an aging population, but also because of things like metabolic disease and obesity associated with it. And one of the interesting things that is sort of a passionate part of what I do on a day-to-day basis is that there's documented disparities that exist in musculoskeletal health, but also in things like data equity and how people receive care with different musculoskeletal illnesses relative to race, ethnicity, et cetera. And then the other thing is that there's other comorbidities that tend to exist in higher prevalence in non-Caucasian individuals. So that is something that is kind of interesting and requires a very tailored approach to address. The thing about arthritis that's interesting, particularly if we talk about the inflammatory type of arthritis, is that there's a whole host of symptoms that aren't necessarily related to joints. Things like fatigue, because of immobility, there is a proneness to develop obesity. There is a higher prevalence of coronary artery disease and atherosclerotic heart and vascular disease. Patients with arthritis will have a myriad of other chronic conditions as well. So about a third of patients have 5 or more chronic conditions. And there is an increase in all-cause mortality. Biggest reason is because of the cardiovascular implications of arthritis. On top of that, there's a significant mental toll with cognitive dysfunction. 58% of patients believe that their disease is misunderstood. 2/3 of patients are reporting anxiety within the previous week. There's also a twofold increase in the likelihood of depression. And so these things really contribute to things like increased stress risks, decreased life satisfaction, and obviously decreased ability to kind of interact with their place of employment and really be active in the work that's done at their jobs. In 2020, from a rheumatoid arthritis standpoint, there was about 17.6 million people that had rheumatoid arthritis. That's also increased in prevalence since the early 90s. And again, prevalence increases due to a myriad of reasons. We know that when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis, there's genetic components involved in it. There's environmental components, and we'll address some of those in short order. So again, as I mentioned about osteoarthritis, it's really this gradual loss of cartilage from joints. The most common joints tend to be weight-bearing joints like knees, hips, hands, and spine. And patients with osteoarthritis typically have pain, stiffness, swelling. They can have a cracking or grating sensation in their joints. They can develop bony outgrowths. They have loss of mobility and deformity. And they have this phenomenon called gelling with increased periods of immobility where the joints sort of take a while to start moving, after they've been stiff for a while. And so just really kind of focusing on treatment, a lot of this is really based on understanding. So we know that there's medications and surgery that are needed, but at times, the real benefit comes from the multidisciplinary approach to care. Things like, focusing on rest, but not, focusing on complete inactivity. Weight loss, we know that 1 pound of weight loss is about 4 pounds of pressure off of the knees. Physical therapy and exercise program, the use of things like orthoses, heat and cold therapies, educational and support, and then really improving overall quality of life and disability, managing mental health. All of those things are of critical importance. From a rheumatoid arthritis standpoint, again, the female to male, relative risk is about 3.5 to 5 to 1. There is, again, a hereditary component to it. So people with autoimmune disease tend to have people in their families with autoimmune diseases. There are definitely promoter genes that are involved in it. But there's also initiating factors that are involved, things like viral infections, et cetera. So not only are these people, these patients at risk for a viral infection sort of ticking off their existing arthritis, but also there's sort of a viral phenomenon that's believed to exist with many of the different types of inflammatory arthritis. And then obviously stress can be a risk factor for disease progression and disease involvement. And this is different than the osteoarthritis. In these patients, there tends to be more involvement of the smaller joints. They tend to have, pain, stiffness, redness, warmth, and swelling. They can develop other inflammatory conditions, things like rheumatoid nodules, particularly late in disease, but they can have other inflammatory conditions, things like anemia. Their platelet counts can go down. They can have heart disease and lung disease that are involved as well. And so again, the treatment here, there are medications, and the newer medications have really been impactful in kind of controlling disease, but education and counseling, rest, exercise, nutrition, and dietary therapy are really, really important. And so to sum things up and to kind of finalize things, because I think we're going to talk a lot about the impact of arthritis on the workplace, the cost burden associated with treating the arthritic conditions is significantly higher. So when it comes to osteoarthritis, as compared to a patient that doesn't have osteoarthritis, there's about a 3 times annual healthcare cost burden, and with rheumatoid arthritis, a 4-time annual cost burden. These patients tend to be higher cost claimants in population cohorts, and a lot of it is due to expensive medications, and also comorbid illness and the management of those comorbid illnesses. They do require surgical procedures, but medications really is the initial therapy, and a lot of these tend to be very tailored drugs that tend to be expensive. And then when it comes to its impact on the job, it is the top cause of disability in the United States. Its total costs are about 136 billion annually to the workforce. It contributes about 10.3 billion in absentee costs, 2 or more days a year as compared to someone without osteoarthritis. And presenteeism, actually physically going to work, but not necessarily being at the top of game, is something that's a little bit more difficult to quantify. Direct costs tend to be about 65 billion, and that's about 11,000 per person per year. And again, indirect costs, including things like lost wages, et cetera, is about 17 billion. Just keep in mind that patients, because of this, often have needs when it comes to benefits and thoughtful benefits design, and often can't access it because of the fact that there's an increased likelihood of financial insecurity related to the fact that they have this chronic illness. And just to hammer home a couple of points on why sort of an engagement at work is important, 20% of arthritis patients in a study that was done in the UK, were concerned about their fitness for work. About 40% were not confident to discuss their disease with their employer. About a third felt that their work colleagues wouldn't understand their disease. And about 17% actually lie about why they take sick leaves. And so this really speaks to very thoughtful strategies. And, my 2 co-guests are going to actually help with this as well. Things like vocational rehab, establishing ergonomic programs, really, thoughtful accommodations, having absentee programs, disease management strategies around fitness training, health promotion, coaches, and leisure. Targeting at-need populations like veterans, for example. And so knowing that veterans have a higher incidence of both of these groups of diseases and really impacting them is a substantial, impact for the organization. And again, really doing a lot of education around, supervisor training and engagement. And so, things like benefit design are important, addressing things like copay assistance, identifying preferred drugs, working with, PBMs to sort of increase some of the transparency, and, addressing things like, biosimilars in the biologics space is an important part of that thoughtful benefit design. So with that, I will stop and turn it back over to Stephanie.
As mentioned, I'm Stephanie Hudgens, and I have the privilege of leading our field engagement efforts here at the Arthritis Foundation. In my role, I focus on empowering our nationwide staff and advancing strategies that make a real difference for the 1 in 4 adults navigating arthritis, especially in the workplace. With nearly a decade of experience in the nonprofit world, I'm deeply committed to fostering meaningful partnerships and creating environments where people and organizations can thrive together. I'd like to take a moment to share my personal journey with arthritis. As Paulo mentioned before, even children get arthritis, and I was diagnosed at just 2 years old with rheumatoid arthritis after developing persistent inflammation in my ankle shortly after I began walking. It became so painful, I actually stopped walking altogether. Throughout my childhood, I struggled to find the right treatments and medications. It was a constant cycle of trial and error. My first job was babysitting, and even then, I found it hard to keep up with the kids I was caring for. In college, the cartilage on my right hip completely deteriorated, causing a noticeable limp. I was working in restaurants at the time, and just getting through a single shift left me in pain for days. Eventually, at just 24 years old, I had my first hip replacement. I share this story not because it's unique, but because it's not. I represent the invisible employee in your workplace, the one quietly navigating chronic pain while still showing up and doing their best and pushing through. And that's exactly why the work we're doing together today matters. One small change can make a big difference. As part of our work, the Arthritis Foundation has partnered with companies and organizations across various industries. And in November of 2020, we conducted 15 interviews with some of those partners. We asked a few key questions, and the responses were eye-opening. One, did you know that 1 in 4 of your employees is living with arthritis? The overwhelming answer, no. Are you aware of the impact arthritis has, not just on individual employees, but on overall productivity, retention, and healthcare costs? Again, most answered no. Do you currently offer any programs or resources specifically designed to support employees living with arthritis? And once more, the common response was no, often because they lack those resources or simply don't know where to begin. In addition to engaging with the companies and organizations we partner with, the Arthritis Foundation also has a robust community of individuals living with arthritis. We regularly seek their input to better understand what truly enhances their quality of life, including in the workplace. Given that many people spend 40 hours or more a week on the job, it's essential to identify what support can make a meaningful difference. From our conversations, we've heard consistent themes like access to resources that promote healthy eating and physical activity, ergonomic tools and equipment that reduce strain and discomfort. But beyond policies and tools, one of the most impactful elements is culture. Creating a workplace that fosters compassion, openness, and understanding, where employees feel seen, heard, and supported, can profoundly influence both well being and job satisfaction. So, what's the solution? Arthritis at Work. The Arthritis Foundation developed this free program to equip employers with turnkey tools and resources in a collaborative, partnership based approach, specifically designed to support the 1 in 4 employees living and working with arthritis. Arthritis at Work is a powerful complement to any existing corporate wellness program. It's designed to reduce those missed work days, increase productivity, and lower healthcare costs. It's an easy way to make a meaningful impact without requiring a major lift. So, what happens when we support employees with arthritis? Here's what we see. When people feel better physically, they're not missing work as often. Managing pain means fewer flare ups and more consistent attendance. When emotional health is supported too, stress and burnout go down. People feel seen, and that really boosts motivation and engagement. Simple things like early intervention, ergonomic tools, and wellness support help prevent complications so employees stay healthier and the healthcare costs stay lower. So, what exactly is Arthritis at Work? It's a completely free program designed to support employees living with arthritis by giving them access to helpful tools, trusted content, and a strong community connection through the Arthritis Foundation. The program is built around 3 main areas of support. For the employees, things like support groups, webinars, expert resources, and even guidance on choosing the right healthcare plan for them. For managers, digital tools that help them better understand arthritis and how to support their teams with empathy and confidence. And of course, for your business, we offer hands on support for rollout, a co branded landing page, and visibility opportunities throughout our website. Whether you're looking to improve employee wellness or just build a more inclusive workplace, Arthritis at Work makes it easy to get started. Arthritis at Work is a customizable, co-branded digital platform that's easy for employees to access. No login required. All they need is the link. At the top of the Arthritis at Work interface, we feature your company's logo, showcasing your partnership with the Arthritis Foundation and your commitment to employee well-being. To make access easy, we provide a customized shortened URL and a QR code that you can use across internal communications, posters, or digital platforms. And we're excited to share that the Arthritis at Work tool is available in both English and Spanish with a simple toggle button. All content throughout the platform is fully translated, making it even more accessible and inclusive for your workforce. Next up on the Arthritis at Work interface is the employee support component of Arthritis at Work. The content is organized into 4 key categories that reflect the real needs of people living with arthritis. The first section is healthy eating, which features tips and tools to support anti-inflammatory nutrition. We also have a section about physical activity, which has safe, joint-friendly exercises and movement guidance. Our pain management content are strategies to manage daily discomfort and flare-ups. And finally, the well-being section covers everything from stress management to sleep solutions. It's designed to be practical, easy to navigate, and relevant to what employees are actually experiencing day to day. Just below the employee support section, you'll find resources for managers. We know that managers play a critical role in shaping the workplace experience, and that includes how supported employees feel. This section equips managers with practical guidance on how to work with and support team members living with arthritis, including communication tips, accommodation ideas, and ways to foster a more inclusive environment. Here you can see just a small sampling of the content available within each hub of the Arthritis at Work platform. We've designed this experience to be engaging, practical, and always evolving. The information is refreshed regularly and new resources are added, so employees have a reason to come back and explore more. We also offer content in a variety of formats, including videos, articles, slideshows, quizzes, and downloadable tools, because we want to meet people where they are and provide support in ways that works best for them. Whether someone is looking for nutrition tips, stress relief techniques, home workouts, or guidance as a manager, there's something here for everyone. The last section of our Arthritis at Work interface focuses on ways employees can get involved with the Arthritis Foundation. Finding a community of people who truly understand what you're going through can have a huge impact, especially on mental and emotional well-being. And we offer many ways for people to connect and feel supported. If you're newly diagnosed or just have questions, the Arthritis Foundation helpline is a great place to start. It's easy to find. It's always featured on the Arthritis at Work tool. We also offer Live Yes Connect groups, which function like support groups and are tailored by arthritis type, geographic location, or even where you are in your journey. Our webinars and podcasts deliver the latest research and information, helping people stay informed and empowered. For those interested in making change, our advocacy efforts are always looking for voices to help break down barriers to care. And finally, we host national and local events, many of which are family friendly and a great way to get involved in a fun, supportive environment. To make it easy for partners to launch and promote Arthritis at Work, we provide a comprehensive toolkit. The toolkit is designed to help you roll out the program seamlessly and with minimal lift on your end. We also provide ongoing support through our bi-monthly email series. All listed stakeholders will receive regular updates with fresh materials, tips, and ideas to help you continue promoting Arthritis at Work and engaging your team. We want you to know you're in great company by choosing to partner with the Arthritis Foundation and offer Arthritis at Work to your employees. What you're seeing here is just a small sample of more than 160 employers currently using the program. It's a growing community of organizations committed to building a more supportive, inclusive workplaces, and we're excited to welcome more partners to that mission. We hope that you agree offering Arthritis at Work to your employees is a smart, meaningful step towards creating a more inclusive and supportive workplace. Getting started is quick and easy. The first step is completing a commitment form. It's not a contract, but it helps us know who to connect with on your team to move things forward. Once we have that form and your logo, we'll have your custom co-branded interface up and running within 3 to 5 business days, and you'll receive a welcome email from us with everything you need. From there, implementation can be as simple as sending an internal email to let employees know the resource is available, or we can work together on a more robust launch plan tailored to your organization's goals. As we close out this portion of the presentation, I want to leave you with a clear call to action. You'll receive a follow-up email that includes both the recording of today's session and the commitment form. Completing that form is the first step in bringing a custom co-branded Arthritis at Work interface to your organization and showing your employees that their well-being truly matters. And now I'm excited to transition into our roundtable discussion. And we're thrilled to kick off this discussion with a panel of experts who bring deep experience in workplace wellness, accessibility, and inclusive strategy. First, we welcome back Paulo, many who we heard from earlier in the program. Paulo is a valued partner in advancing workplace health and wellness, and we're excited to have him back to share more insights and perspective during this discussion. Joining Paulo is Diane Hettinger, CEO of Enabling Ability, where she focuses on disability inclusion, accessibility, and workplace productivity. Diane brings over 15 years of leadership experience, including her time as Director of Accessibility and Disability Inclusion at Prudential. She's an expert in ADA accommodations, human resources, and assistive technology, and is actively involved in national disability employment organizations. Diane also holds multiple professional certifications and brings a deep passion for creating inclusive workplaces. Also joining us is Keith Winnick, a seasoned health and wellness professional with more than 25 years of experience. He's the former Director of Health and Wellness Analytics at Prudential, where he led data-driven wellness programs aimed at reducing health risks and boosting employee engagement. Keith has led award-winning initiatives recognized by the American Heart Association and brings incredible insight into building meaningful, inclusive wellness strategies. Thank you, Paulo, Diane, and Keith for joining us. And Paulo, I will turn it back over to you.
Good to see Diane and Keith again. We've had a lot. I've had a lot of opportunity to work with the two of them, and they've been incredible mentors. And a transition from a full-time clinical role to really tackling health and health challenges that exist earlier upstream in terms of how you thoughtfully design inclusive strategies to not only address clinical decline, but then also to address maintaining wellness. And so I'm really privileged to have both of them back, and I'm excited to ask some questions and make this a dialogue. For the audience, if you do have any questions, please do put that information into chat. And we'll make sure that we read and answer those questions and address them. So without further ado, let's dig in. So Diane and Keith, there's some obvious misconceptions, and perhaps you can kind of shed light on what some of those conceptions are about employers who have employees with chronic conditions. And I guess we'll start off with, Keith, how do you tailor wellness programs to really meet the diverse needs of the workforce? And how do you define a culture of health within an organization to really promote a culture that's inclusive and supportive, giving some of the misconceptions that you see employers having about employees with chronic illness?
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Stephanie, for great introduction. Yeah, so as far as creating a culture of health in the workplace, we'll start there. I think that there's a lot of ways to do that, but it's it could be defined in many different ways, and I've always defined it as you'll know you'll know it when you get there. You'll be able to know that you've achieved the culture of health. You'll kind of feel it. It becomes what you do at a company. And it starts with well-being being valued from the top. Certainly need the top down approach, senior leaders valuing wellness and creating that culture, but also coming from the bottom up as well and creating that culture. In creating a culture, you have to take in my opinion, a holistic approach, looking at health. My years in the wellness industry, you used to have, there was exercise and there's nutrition and there was mental health, and it was all kind of siloed and separate. But over the years, we've seen many companies develop, their dimensions of health, their wheels of health. And for example, at our time at Prudential, we looked at health very holistically, where there was different components of physical, the emotional, spiritual, financial, and social aspects of health, because all those areas of health really make up your overall well-being. So when you're designing programs and trying to create a culture of health, I think it's important to make sure every program really touches on all of those different areas, and you're looking at it from a holistic approach. And your question about, meeting the diverse needs of your population, it's important to first identify your population. We'll get into some more talking about data, but assessing your population, knowing what your population looks like. I've worked with a number of different organizations over the years, and they've had very different needs and concerns around health. And so I think it's important to really understand your population, drive the your programs based on what the data is telling you, and also really try to personalize the programs as much as you can towards individuals and people.
Thanks, Keith. So Diane, kind of piggybacking on what Keith said. So again, some of the biggest misconceptions that you see with employers, around chronic illness, and what types of workplace adjustments might a company make, for a person with arthritis or any chronic conditions to really allow the optimal performance of that individual in their role.
Sure, and thank you again. Thank you, Stephanie and Paulo, for inviting me to be part of this. I really appreciate it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that disabilities are visible. They're apparent. And especially with arthritis, you mentioned the large numbers of individuals who have arthritis throughout their lifespan. That's 25% of any work environment are going to be individuals with disability. And 70 to 75% of those 25 are not apparent. So they're disabilities that span chronic illnesses, not just physical, but mental health, and cognitive disabilities on certain levels, which includes neurodiversity and autism. So again, the large numbers that are not just people aging out of our workforce, but individuals coming in and are part of our young talent and our early career employees as well. As far as what do we do about that? I think the most important thing is to, whenever you're making a statement about encouraging employees to ask for a workplace adjustment or some kind of change that they need. They're qualified employees. They're very well able to do their jobs, but they might need a change. They might need an adjustment just to make it easier for them, to make it easier to get to work, to make it easier to do their jobs. It's important to ask those questions to everyone, because you just don't know of, that 70 to 70% of your employees might have non-apparent conditions and or disabilities. And so you need to ask those questions and make that information available to everyone. And you need to communicate it widely and thoroughly, communicate so that everyone knows what their options are. And that helps build what Keith was referring to as that culture, so that people feel like they belong and they can ask for what they need. The other thing to keep in mind is just because someone might have a condition or a disability does not mean they need anything. They may have already brought with them to work what they need, or it's just part of what they do day in, day out to do their jobs efficiently and be productive. However, some folks do need an adjustment or some assistance, and you have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, because everyone is different. And, one of the adages we always say is, if you've met one person with arthritis, you've met one person with arthritis, because everyone has differences in the way that the condition is affecting them or impacting their ability to do their job. Some of the adjustments, to answer your question, that we might see is limiting some of the reaching or the walking or the lifting, the pulling that goes on as part of their role, if that's the case. It might be something as technologically advanced as voice-to-text software for some individuals, or it might be grip aids. It might be periodic rest breaks, sit-stand workstations, so that you're mobile but not overly mobile and not totally immobile, which is very, very important to keep moving. Things as, such as pedaling under the desk. There's devices that people can use to put under their desk, and they can pedal away just to keep themselves mobile, or they don't have to if they won't need the rest. Flexibility in schedule is extremely important. And one of the things that we've found in conditions such as arthritis and the ability to make the workplace accessible for everyone is good management skills. And maybe we can talk about this a little later as, training and education, but good managers will allow the flexibility that individuals need to do their job and not get overstressed, from that. And that flexibility, perhaps it's working remotely or some kind of telework, or it might be just the ability to go to a quiet room or some kind of a modified room that's available in the workplace for people to take a break and then get back to work and do their, and perform at high levels.
Thanks, Diane. So moving on to, I think one of the things that was brought up in, some of the early introductions was really around, the diversity piece of it, and, the fact that health is multidimensional, understanding that there are drivers of health that, transcend just simply, what, sort of genetic predisposition you have or what lifestyle, has impacted. And I think that, at Prudential, we were doing social determinants of health before social determinants of health were cool, right? Now it's kind of the buzzword in healthcare. Keith, thinking about, the diversity piece, thinking about, the things that aren't necessarily codified from a health standpoint, like there's no lab test for it. Just, understanding, sort of best practices when it comes to, addressing, things like mental health, some of the, data and social equity issues. And then again, how does, data really help shape an effective strategy around wellness?
Yeah, no, I think when you're talking about diversity, I mean, that word can mean a lot of different things. When you talk about race and culture and those sorts of things, that's how a lot of people think of diversity, which is something you definitely need to consider. So looking at your data, again, understanding your population, looking at your population by race, gender, sexual orientation, even those things like that, because sometimes people with those different diversities function differently in how they care for themselves and how they access medical care. Our time at Prudential, we did a whole study looking at access to care in the work, for the populations by diversity, and saw very different results in how people access the emergency room, what populations access care for mental health differently. So using data to understand that, I think, is important, but also understanding your population and the kind of work that your people do. For example, people have very different jobs in the workplace. You may have a call center environment, and that environment may act very differently in how they care for themselves and have different health conditions that show up in the data, as opposed to your group that does financial investments, and people have higher incomes and they may be able to get care differently, or they may access care differently. So looking at your population, from that respect, I think is very, important as well. So you can see where there are kind of like bigger bangs for your buck, we'll say, in doing interventions in certain area, still considering, that everybody is different and everybody's not the same, but at least you can give you really ideas of where to focus, where your main concerns are, and looking at it that way from data. Having cultural sensitivity around programs that you offer, certain outcome-based programs. If you're offering incentives on different things, you need to take into consideration that different cultures may there may be a bias against them. So when you're designing your programs, make sure that there's something for everybody. If people have certain disabilities, and they're not able to do a step challenge, we'll say, have an alternative for those populations, so there is something for everybody. So you're creating that all-inclusive environment. And I think managers and leaders of people are very important when you're looking at these things, that you're providing the proper training for leaders and managers. And when I say leaders and managers, I'm talking anybody who manages people, not just senior leadership, all levels of leadership. An employee's job is only, their experience is what they're getting from their direct supervisor, the direct manager. So if senior leadership is providing all these programs and saying all the right things and putting out mission statements, but their direct leader is not living that, then that employee is not getting that impact. So it's important when you look at leadership training, for that. And sometimes it's really simple for what leaders can do, for people. It's not that complicated. It could be as simple as, saying hello to your employees every day and just acknowledging them, and or being aware of all the other programs and things that are available. So when something does come up, you're presenting that. And probably the biggest thing is for leaders is practice what you preach. If you're telling employees that it's important to take care of their health and that it's they need to take breaks during the day and to try to reduce burnout, they need to live that too. If they send them emails on the weekends, and they, some leaders do that, and that's fine, but make sure that they communicate to them that I'm doing this because this is what I do. I'm not expecting that, having clear, open communication. So I think there's a lot of things you can do from a leadership perspective that can help as well.
Thanks, Keith. And I think you bring up some, really amazing points. And, for those, business leaders and on the call, having sort of a focus on, well-being, not only improves individual employees and how they sort of interact, but having employees that feel included and, and there's a sense of belonging tend to contribute to an overall healthier culture. So it is a cyclical thing, right? So healthier culture leads to healthier employees, leads to healthier culture. And, it's kind of a good kind of vortex there, right? So that's really important. Diane, sort of going along the lines of, the inclusion and really kind of setting up, company policies, what's an absolute requirement, what's a nice to have, what's a must have. One of the biggest indictments I have about, healthcare policy setting, or things around healthcare that are policy set, is that I feel like there's like a lot of box checking exercises just to say that things exist. How do we make this so that this is really, not a theory, right? And truly a part of employee culture, a part of, organizational culture, and thoughtful in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's important for businesses. Well, first of all, we've talked about training and education. The most important thing is to educate all levels of management, as Keith mentioned, around the prevalence of disabilities or health conditions, the types, and just, how it might impact their employees in the workplace generally. Obviously not getting into specifics, but just letting managers be aware, raising the awareness level that what their employees might be encountering, to be at the job and to do their job. And one of the things that I find is most important is not to just focus workplace adjustments on one area, but to include everyone in the business. So it's not just the employee and their manager or HR. It could be facilities. It could be talent acquisition. It could be the development folks, who do training, legal, I mean, it just encompasses, and that touches on finance as well. So we need to make all facilities accessible to everyone and not really consider one person who has a condition or a disability, but to build in from the very beginning an inclusive or universal design of workspaces so that everyone has what they need. I mean, it starts with the parking, it starts with the front door, and and the turnstiles to get into the building, and then the restrooms and meeting rooms, to be mindful if someone has a scooter because they're a person with arthritis, or they're using a wheelchair or other kind of mobility device, that they can get around the meeting room and that the chairs aren't in the way, you know? So just being thoughtful generally of design of buildings and our space, and not making assumptions about who might need it and who might not, but just making the assumption that everyone needs, you know, an accessible restroom. That and providing things like, you know, and this might not have too much impact on arthritis, but in general, medical health conditions, having captioning available all the time for our employees. One of the aspects that I find has been the most beneficial in workplaces is supporting BRGs and ERGs, because this is a place where employees and associates with common conditions or common experiences, life experiences, can talk, meet other folks, have discussions, share ideas, share experiences, and then bring forward to the business what might be helpful. There's an adage another phrase that we always use is nothing about us without us. So, you know, engaging your BRGs and your ERGs, you know, perhaps there's a separate committee just for individuals with arthritis, and they can bring forward some ideas that would make it easier for that group of individuals to be able to access and to do their jobs and to be more productive, which, you know, every time an employee is more productive, it raises the production and the success of the entire organization. So but I think the most important thing is to try to think about it up front. If you're building a new building, think about these things. Get together any BRG or ERG that you have already and talk with them about what they might like to see in a new workspace, especially when you're renovating or a building, so that it's built in and that it doesn't take a lot of financial investment to retrofit or to fix it for perhaps even just one individual. So.
Thanks, Diane. And just a reminder to the audience, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. So I want to move on to you know, sort of a two-part question of how do you measure success, and then if you're thinking about, you know, what can be done now to an organization that doesn't have a well-orchestrated strategy around wellness or illness. So I'll start with Keith on the wellness front. What small but meaningful changes can be made now, and how do you ultimately measure success?
Small and meaningful changes that can be made now. I think, you know, leadership, you know, buy-in on things, having mission statements from leaders, having, you know, set up your, you know, where are you going with this? What's your strategy? What is your mission? You know, make it clear that there is a commitment. Sometimes that alone is a small, easy thing to do, and it's a big step that you can take, you know, towards creating that culture of health. You know, measuring, you know, the effectiveness of wellness programs, a lot of ways. I'm a big fan of health risk assessments, you know, putting those in place, but sometimes they can be cumbersome and expensive for companies to do, but you can gather a lot of data and of assessing your population there as well. But doing employee focus groups, I mean, that's another kind of small step I think you could take as well. You know, what is your population? What are the needs of your population? What will engage them in wellness programs? So doing small focus groups to understand and assess. You know, so I think you need to do that step before you can really do anything. Make sure you're going in the right direction. As far as measuring success and outcomes, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I mean, you've all heard the term ROI, return on investment for programs. I'm not personally a huge fan of measuring ROI and you know, from a dollars and cents from a healthcare claims data. I think it's kind of is a trap sometimes. There's, you know, it's very difficult to measure the impact of a wellness program by looking at money saved from a health benefits perspective and a healthcare cost perspective. While we do believe it does impact that, it's hard to measure that, especially when you are doing having a holistic approach to your health and wellness. It's hard to say, okay, this program is the one that's driving the cost down, or is it this one? You know, if you have an all-encompassing holistic, it's very difficult to measure that. But I think it is important to look at impacts on performance and productivity if you can. And there's ways to gather that data, you know, looking at, you know, Paul had mentioned presenteeism, which is difficult to measure, but it is a real thing, people being impacted. There are some productivity surveys that are out there that are, you can measure the impact of productivity and performance, and then looking at the correlation of other conditions like financial health, loneliness, and then those sorts of things on performance and productivity. And the reason why I think it's important, not only to look at the data, but that helps make your case, your business case for business leaders. For years, we used to show business leaders from a health risk assessment, this percentage of your population has high blood pressure, this percentage has diabetes, even this percentage has arthritis. And you'd see that, which was interesting, but so what? What does it mean? And if you start showing that those conditions are directly impacting performance and productivity, looking at things like you know, disability rates and length of disability for certain conditions, or people that get interventions may have less disability or less likely to be off. You know, that's what resonates with leaders. Looking at retention rates, an employee who is participating in these programs and getting the proper care, you know, is more likely to stay with the company. If they feel the company cares about them, they're more likely to stay with the company. And so those are real dollars and cents things, and those are things that leaders, you know, are important to them in getting their job done. So I think it's important to use that data in that way to show them. And looking at benchmark data is always important as well. If you don't have the ability to gather your own data, there's plenty of benchmark data out there that you can use, you know, to help make that business case. We're really trying to tie it into performance and productivity and the things that are important to leaders I think is important.
Yeah, and I think I think the three of us have all worked in jobs and careers that it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And you know, in terms of really seeing dividends pay off, it's not going to happen, you know, with the institution of a program on day one, right? It's going to be cumulative, and it's going to be you know, additive. So Diane, just you know, meaningful changes that employers can make, and then how do you measure success of a program geared at addressing inclusion?
Well, I think one of the other things that I think is, you know, I don't know, you know, Keith mentioned all the data elements that, you know, we like to keep track of when we're thinking about what we've done and who we have in our workplaces and what we've done for them. But for me, one of the biggest ways that we can tell whether our programs are working or we're providing us that culture that creates a sense of belonging for our associates is two aspects, actually. Self-ID campaigns, where the more people who actually speak about or answer even a confidential survey, whether they have a disability or a health condition or not, or they're a veteran or they're not, is the levels of answering that is directly tied to our culture. So if you don't have a culture that you've proven that you have the services in place and that you've accommodated and made adjustments for individuals who need what they need, who have what they need in order to do their job, they're not going to answer that survey. They're not going to participate, or they're going to say they're not going to answer affirmatively. So the higher levels that you have, that's an excellent indication that people feel comfortable saying, yes, I'm a person with a disability, or I have a health condition. And the other thing is employee surveys, satisfaction surveys, you know, how happy people are to actually work. But the one thing that I think that really makes a difference is storytelling. Engaging employees to tell their story, and the higher up you can go in the levels of management, the better. You know, if you have a chief operating officer or a chief executive officer who speaks out and talks about either their own or a family member's health condition or disability, that is going to make people feel like it's okay. I belong here. You know, it's okay for me to also talk about mine. And the more that individuals tell their stories and talk about their life experiences, the more that other employees come out and feel comfortable with that as well. And I think that's what builds workplaces that are inclusive and open. And again, I use the word belonging, but you know, people feel like they have a place and they can do their best work. And that, you know, they're participating in the organization. The other thing, actually, when I mention that, is tying what you're doing for employees to business outcomes. So it's directly related to what, you know, the board of directors or trustees have said, we want this company to achieve. If you can tie what you're doing for individuals with health conditions to achieving those objectives, then, you know, it's a win-win, because you're showing that you are indeed helping the entire productivity of the organization be more successful.
Thanks, Diane. And then this is like the 30-second speed round question, but probably could take forever. A lot of technology has, you know, kind of, especially over the last like 18 months, AI, et cetera. What does this look like in, you know, 1, 5, 10 years from now? Like what do you see as sort of the nirvana that we get to because of some of the technological advances?
I'll jump in and say more people with disabilities, more people with arthritis in the workplace and being able to do their jobs. You know, if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't have the levels of individuals with disability in the workplace we have right now. And so as technology and AI become more prolific, you know, it just adds to, and that is extremely talented employee pool, is individuals with disability, many of which are highly educated and just maybe weren't able to get to the workplace, or now with technology, they can participate more fully in the workplace. And companies, not necessarily the place, but the company. Go ahead.
I mean, 5 years, boy, with AI, who knows? I mean, sky's the limit. I think what we're seeing now, I mean, you saw with the Apple Watches and the technology with now the EKGs on there, measuring your heart rate, knowing if you're sleeping, you can look at your watch and say, oh, I'm getting sick by looking at your watch. You know, where is this going? I mean, I think from a predictive analytics perspective, I think that's going to be really, you know, being maybe more proactive, putting together care plans based on AI, you know, what works. But I think there's also opportunities in the workplace of measuring your programs and, you know, using AI for your programs and your communications. I mean, I feel like I use AI for every aspect of, you know, I do now. You want to say something, you plug it in there, but putting together a whole plan. I mean, I do have concerns that, you know, there's privacy issues that you have to really think about. And is that personal touch going to get lost with all this, which I still believe is very important. So I think, you know, as we move with the AI, you know, don't want to lose that. I don't want to go to robots taking care of people, which, you know, could go that way. Yeah, so I think it's a lot of unknown. It's an exciting time. It's also a scary time. And I'm really curious to see where it goes.
Awesome. Thank you both again. This has been great. And I'll turn it back to Stephanie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone so much for being here. We are at time, but if you have any questions for any of our speakers or about arthritis at work, you're welcome to reach out to me. I will make sure that those get into the right hands to be answered. And thank you, Diane, Keith, and Paulo for the great discussion today. It was wonderful. We appreciate you.